Be forewarned. If you are easily upset or don't have the stomach for controversy, do not listen to this program.
God, it's horrible. They're going to let these people get away with this horrendous, appalling, barbaric, brutal, vicious procedure against little girls to destroy their genitals, destroy their sex lives for the rest of their lives. Do these little girls have a right, a constitutional right, not to have their genitals mutilated by insane adults?
I can hear them say,
This is Jim Greenfield, the Hulk Hogan of talk radio, star of The Decline and Fall of America, formerly known as The Jim Greenfield Show, starring Jim Greenfield, with my sidekick, Morgan Van Kempema. Quote of the day: if you put the federal government in charge of the Sahara Desert, in 5 years there'd be a shortage of sand. Milton Friedman. So the first topic, like I said, we're supposed to start out with a little banter, but I kind of rely on you to like kind of help out with that.
Okay.
I'm paying you.
I can make a comment on the whole Hulk thing.
Yeah, there you go. That would work. Actually, what my producer did, Stuart, does do, is when I say the quote.
Yeah.
I'll say the quote, then I'll say Milton Friedman. I'll say, who's Milton Friedman? And then I'll say, he's the guy who said, and repeat the quote. Yeah, it's kind of a shtick.
That's annoying, though.
You think?
I know, yeah.
What was funny the first 10 or 12 times we did it?
Maybe.
Okay.
I think maybe that's probably 11 times too many, but,
Well,
could be 9 times too many. I don't know.
I'll tell you, Morgan, my kids sometimes complain that I keep telling the same joke over and over.
Well, you're a dad. It's kind of your job.
It's kind of my job, but beyond that, I feel like I'll keep telling the joke until they get it.
What if they get it? It's just not a good joke.
Well, that's subjective.
It would concern me greatly if you had the same sense of humor as your young daughter.
I knew I was in trouble when I discovered that my 8-year-old son and I had the same taste in movies. I thought, this isn't good. Yeah, we both liked Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, and I thought, it's not good that I have the same taste as an 8-year-old boy.
It doesn't speak highly of your maturity level.
Correct.
That's okay. Maybe he's, mature for his age.
No, it's not that. It's just like,
Dudes don't change.
Guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger movies.
Do they?
We all do. Yeah, normal guys.
Okay.
Your gay guys maybe don't. I don't know. But okay. I'm not. And I didn't mean to pick a fight with you about that. So don't take.
Did I say anything?
Don't take the bait. You rolled your eyes.
Is that what that was?
Whatever.
Okay.
Okay. So anyway, the first topic comes to you from the Reach for My Revolver department. Some a story in the Chicago Tribune, Detroit Free Press. Mm-hmm. Federal judge finds female genital mutilation law unconstitutional. Now, before I get into this, I have a question for the listeners. How many of you, by a show of hands...
Because you can see people?
All right, never mind.
Okay.
That's a minor detail. How many of you think that female genital mutilation, FGM, female genital mutilation is only a problem in backward, barbaric Muslim countries? Is that what you thought? Because that's what I thought.
Really?
But guess what?
You're wrong.
Yeah, it's
Shocking.
The Muslim immigrants have imported this problem into the United States.
It's not just Muslims.
I think it is, but
No,
actually,
it's not.
well, okay. Before we get into that,
Chart.
Oh, good. That's it. From now on, I'm not gonna tip you off what the topic's gonna be.
Why? Because I bring.
Yeah, because you do research now.
Ugh, it's annoying.
But just to make sure, in case there are people who don't know what female genital mutilation is, it's a ritualistic practice common among Muslims of cutting off part of a girl's genitals when she's a little girl. And they cut off the clitoris.
There's actually different types of genital mutilation.
Good. So they cut off the clitoris and, well, maybe, Morgan, maybe you're an expert on genitals. So
Of
do you
course.
want to elaborate on this?
Well-
on what female genital mutilation is?
Well, since you
Get
don't know
closer
much
to the
about
microphone.
female genitals, I'm sure I'd be happy to make it up for you.
I probably don't know as much as you know,
Well, that's true. I'll give you that.
but I do have a theory that guys like Bruce Jenner, maybe he's not gay. Caitlyn Jenner, Bruce / Caitlyn Jenner.
I know.
Maybe he's not really gay. My theory is that actually he likes women so much that he wanted to be one. That way he could be with a woman all day. And whenever, if he ever wanted to touch a woman, right there. It's right there. That's my theory.
I think most dudes would have boobs if they, didn't look weird. Just so
anyway.
they could play with
But
them.
anyway, that's a
Right,
digression.
So female genital mutilation. There's,
Yes.
There's actually 4 different types,
You-
technically.
Okay, you're going
But-
to mutilate the words. But go ahead.
You want to be like that, really?
Go ahead.
Okay. So there's 3 different types.
No, I was ringing the bell as a joke. That was a joke.
Love
Joke.
you. You're the
Boy, that
best.
really gets your back up when I ring that bell. It's like a Pavlovian response. Okay, go ahead.
Are you done?
I'm done. I'm listening.
Okay. All right.
I
So
don't give a whole speech. Just
what?
go ahead.
Are we doing this now? Because I think last show it didn't work out well when I
No,
was
no. Go ahead.
Oh, so sad. But the most common type is partial or complete removal of the clitoris. But there are 2 other types that are a lot more extreme.
Oh.
That can remove part of the labia or sew the entire labia shut, leaving a small opening for the urethra and the vagina, which does need to be cut open for intercourse or for childbirth. It can get pretty extreme.
Wow.
Some of the religious historical context is actually as a rape prevention.
Rape prevention.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It was to keep the women safe. I mean, this isn't true for all religions, but there are a lot of.
Well, how about it
that's
just,
the basic.
like a chastity belt would be a less invasive way of doing that.
How about guys keep their.
How about people don't rape women?
There you go. That's a good one.
I knew we
But
could
actually,
find
it's
common
not just
ground.
Muslim. It's Roman Catholics. It's actually pretty common in certain sects of Roman Catholics and
Yeah, I doubt it.
and Christians. There are.
I doubt it. You got facts to prove it?
I do. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Well,
Right.
I am first and foremost an empiricist. Now, my ideas are always right, but theoretically,
Okay.
if someone could introduce facts that would prove that an idea that I have is wrong, I'm committed to the idea that my idea will yield to the facts. Unlike most people who cling to their ideas no matter how demonstrably wrong they are proven by facts and logic.
But you could.
People do. They'll do that. They'll cling to the
It's
ideas.
called confirmation bias.
But okay, but so, should we do this now or come back to it?
Do what?
The evidence that you have that this is being done in other than in Muslim tribes.
Well, it's in certain sects of other religions. I mean, it's not just Muslims, no. Now, this is
I
for
think we
other
should cover
countries.
that. I think we should cover it, but let's come back to it
Okay.
because I want to go over the article first. But don't let me forget. I want to come back to it. I'm sincerely interested to learn this.
Okay.
Okay, not contrary to your accusation in the last segment that I'm not interested in learning any facts.
I didn't
Other
have
than
a
what I
pretty
already
enough
know.
chart for the last segment.
Yeah,
I
you didn't
needed,
have a chart.
visuals.
It was just you. Yeah, it was just you mouthing off. That's your
Right,
idea of
so
facts.
I'll bring colorful. I'll bring a PowerPoint slideshow.
That will help.
I have a projector.
Okay, so the thing is that I'm sure that Morgan here will make a contrary argument, but it is my understanding that the reason that these primitive Muslim tribes believe in female genital mutilation is because they regard women as property, and that they belong to the man, and they do this when the girls are young, so that when they grow up, they will not enjoy sex. They won't get any pleasure from sex. And this is, from what I've read, is for the purpose of preventing adultery and infidelity. So the woman is the property of the man, so the sex is only for his pleasure. And so they do this in order, because the for some reason Muslim men are unusually insecure and worried about their women cheating on them. Now, assuming that is the reason, if I could talk to these guys, I would explain to them, hey, guys, there's a better way to keep the woman from cheating on you. Instead of cutting off her genitals so that she doesn't have any pleasure, or cutting off her clitoris so she doesn't have any pleasure, learn how to pleasure her. Learn how to satisfy her. And because it's much more uncommon for women who are sexually satisfied with their mates to be unfaithful. If they're unfaithful, very frequently it's because they're frustrated, they're sexually not gratified, they're not having an orgasm, and so then they're more likely to be on the prowl and open to infidelity. So maybe these guys don't understand that. I don't know.
Well, okay. First of all, I think so that probably is part of it, but there's actually a lot more complicated reasons.
Are you suggesting IGM means simplistic?
Maybe.
Such a sweet smile. You're not going
Yeah.
to tell me that I'm sensitive, and what was the other word you used?
You're delicate.
Delicate, yeah.
And insecure.
Insecure.
Yeah. And elderly. But
Elderly.
that's depending on your definition. It's a state of mind, not an age.
Well, also my state of body. I mean, chronologically, you're right. I'm like, quote unquote, a senior, although I don't like that word. To me, a senior is like a guy in his last year of high school. But physiologically, I happen to be in excellent shape. And, I do transcendental meditation, which keeps me young, and exercise every day.
How do you define keeps you young? I mean,
physically strong, active, athletic. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Thank you for
Okay.
sharing.
Yeah.
But
let's not talk about me. That's enough about me.
Yeah. So there are other reasons to do. It's female circumcision.
It's not.
But
it's not circumcision.
That is how it's seen by a lot of cultures. It's also seen generally the family members that encourage it the most, that are most adamant, are often the moms. Because it's seen as a tradition that, like, it happened to me and I was fine, so we'll pass it on. So, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons. A lot of it's purity and cleanliness.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like clean and pure to me.
But
the feminists, the feminists should be the ones who are most offended and outraged by this. But let me read the article.
But using your argument that it was, as the women were property and to mutilate them and all that, why do we do it to our sons then? I mean, we do circumcise.
No.
It's
But
not
if
the same.
it's
just the removal of labia, it's about the same as a circumcision for a
It is
man.
not.
Okay.
Okay, it is not. It's absolutely different, and I'll tell you what the difference is. Men who are circumcised, which most American men are circumcised. I mean, it started with the Jews, but it became common practice. Do not have any significant effect on the rest of their lives. It doesn't destroy their sex lives. It doesn't destroy them from the capacity of enjoying sex and sexual intimacy. So it's totally different. Whatever effect it has, if it has any at all, it's totally insignificant. It's insignificant. It has insignificant, if any, impact at all in your life.
It's not a necessary medical procedure.
Well, that may be.
And I would argue that you don't need to do that.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't believe in it. I don't believe in it. Okay, so I'm
I'm
not arguing in favor of circumcision, but I don't want to blur the line. I mean, the difference is extraordinary. But anyway, let me just read this to you. So, in case you thought that female genital mutilation is only a foreign problem, this is from Detroit. In a major blow to the government, as I said, this is from Chicago Tribune and Detroit Free Press. In a major blow to the government, a federal judge in Detroit has declared the nation's female genital mutilation law unconstitutional. Unconstitutional, thereby dismissing nearly all of the charges against 2 Michigan doctors and 7 others accused of subjecting at least 9 minor girls to genital cutting in the nation's first FGM, female genital mutilation case. By the way, this article later says that they believe that actually there were more than 100 girls that were female, had their genitals mutilated, destroyed by these people, these defendants. But anyway, the historic case involves minor girls from Michigan, Illinois, and Minnesota, including one, wait a minute, I lost my place, including some who cried, screamed, and bled during the procedure. U.S. District Judge Bernard Friedman concluded that Congress did not have the authority to pass the 22-year-old federal law that criminalizes female genital mutilation in America. Okay, so in other words, in 1996, Congress passed a bipartisan bill, Democrats and Republicans supported, prohibiting the practice of female genital mutilation and providing for fines and imprisonment terms of up to 5 years for those who violate it. The statute at issue states, quote, Whoever knowingly circumcises, excises, or infibulates the whole or any part of the labia majora or labia minora or clitoris of another person, maybe it's pronounced clitoris, of another person under the age of 18 shall be fined or imprisoned for up to 5 years, or both. Prosecutors argue that Nagarwala, that's Dr. Jumana Nagarwala, the lead defendant, did exactly that when she cut the genitals of two 7-year-old Minnesota girls who were tricked into the procedure in 2017 by their mothers and cried and bled afterward. Prosecutors allege that Nagarwala may have subjected, as I say, up to 100 girls to the procedure over a 12-year period. Okay.
So,
4 mothers also been charged, that kind of corroborates what you're saying, accused of subjecting their daughters to the unlawful procedure. Although I suspect, although you can say the mothers are to blame, and they certainly are,
well, certainly.
I suspect that in Muslim society, where men rule, I mean, talk about women being oppressed.
I think you're very much overgeneralizing.
I'm not overgeneralizing. I'm right.
Okay.
Men rule over the women. They control them. And I would bet anything that if you look into this, you'll find the men are telling them, you got to do this. You got to have the girl.
Is that right?
And the women do what they're told.
Are all Christians the same?
No. The
Okay,
defendants,
so neither are all Muslims.
True.
So
the
how
defendants,
can you overgeneralize like that?
I didn't say that all Muslims do this
You said that the men rule.
in these societies. Look,
And what are these societies?
My wife worked for a Muslim family in Singapore that wasn't like this. They weren't wacko.
Okay, so
They were decent people. Okay, so I'm not saying that all Muslims.
the men rule, like that's not necessarily.
Well, it is the Muslim way.
It's also the Christian way, but they're not all like that.
Yeah, unfortunately. But that is my favorite verse in the Bible.
Which one?
The one that says that the husband shall rule over his wife. I think it's something like the husband shall rule over his wife as Jesus rules over the husband, or something like that.
The women can't speak in church; they can only ask questions at home.
I don't think it says that.
Yeah, it does.
They didn't have church.
It also says if you're raised.
Jesus didn't have a church.
Most of the Bible was written long
outside.
after Jesus.
Not that long. But anyway, I don't want to get into a theological discussion. The defendants are all... See, this is what I mean, where you get me into these digressions. I want to stay focused on the topic.
Then focus on it.
Okay, thank you. The defendants are all members of a small Indian Muslim sect known as the Dawoodi. The sect practices female circumcision and believes it's a religious rite of passage. Now, I'm going to give you plenty of time to talk about this, but there were a few points I wanted to make. Okay?
Did you make them?
No.
All right.
I just read the article.
Please go on.
So, my first question is, why did this judge choose this particular case for the federal judiciary to finally discover the 10th Amendment? Now, the 10th Amendment is the amendment of the Constitution, which I've talked about before, that says that, to me, it's like the essence of the concept of limited government, which is supposed to be at the heart of our Constitution.
Okay.
It says that the powers not delegated to the United States government, the powers not delegated to the United States are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So it's basically imposing a limitation on federal power that says that the federal government only has those powers that are explicitly delegated to it by the United States Constitution. Now, the 10th Amendment, until this judge ruled the other day, was a dead letter.
Okay.
It's totally not enforced. The courts do not enforce it. They don't impose any limits on federal power. The federal government can virtually do whatever it wants. They do most of what the federal government does is not authorized by the Constitution, is therefore unconstitutional. But the courts never, ever say, you can't do that. I mean, they almost did it with Obamacare. But Judge Roberts sided with the liberals in the court, and they voted 5-4 to uphold Obamacare, even though there's nothing in the Constitution that authorizes the federal government to take over the healthcare system. That's an example. I could go on forever just about that. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, welfare, corporate bailouts. None of that is authorized by the Constitution, but the federal government does it. It's about 2/3, more than 2/3 of every federal budget is transfer programs where the government is basically handing out money and benefits to people without any authorization from the Constitution. So the 10th Amendment is a dead letter. The courts don't enforce it. All of a sudden, on this one case, they finally discover, oh, the federal government doesn't have the power to prohibit female genital mutilation. So why would they choose that as the one case to finally discover the 10th Amendment when the result is so horrendous? So that's one question. Okay. Now, having said that, that doesn't necessarily mean that I concede the point. Because when I first read this, I felt a bifurcated reaction. I felt, on the one hand, gee, it's nice that a federal judge finally figured out that there's a 10th Amendment and that the federal government can't just do whatever it wants, and said, oh, well, they don't have the authority to pass this law. So, well, that's good. But on the other hand, I said, God, it's horrible. They're going to let these people get away with this horrendous, appalling, barbaric, brutal, vicious procedure against little girls to destroy their genitals, destroy their sex lives for the rest of their lives. So they're really going to let them get away with that? This is the one case where they find the 10th Amendment? So, and then I thought about it some more, and I said, well, is there a right? Do these little girls have a right, a constitutional right, not to have their genitals mutilated by insane adults? And I said, well, I have to search for this because it's not apparent. And I don't want to be guilty of what I accuse my adversaries of, which is, engaging in a lot of mental gymnastics and convoluted specious reasoning in order to uphold something that is really unconstitutional. But I said, well, okay, where could we find somewhere in the Constitution, it doesn't explicitly say that young girls have a right not to have their genitals mutilated, but maybe there's some provisions of the Constitution that do protect their rights. So I start with the Fifth Amendment, which says, I'm extrapolating from it, no person may be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Well, is for a child, now understand that, of course, legally, children are unable to give consent. Right. They lack the mental capacity to consent. That's why if an adult has sex with a child, it's illegal, because even if the child says, oh, okay, right. No, the child can't do that. The child doesn't have the mental capacity under the law to give consent. So the child, the 7-year-old girl in this case, she can't give consent. Oh, it's okay, go ahead and mutilate my genitals. She can't do that, right? So does she have a right of liberty not to have that done to her when she's too young to give consent to it? And I think you could make an argument that, yeah. Now, the thing is, the Fifth Amendment, as much as the Constitution, is designed to protect individuals against state action. So the government's not doing this.
Their families.
But the government is also not protecting her.
Right.
Okay? So I think you could make a Fifth Amendment argument that she has a right to liberty not to have her body damaged in this way, not to be maimed in this way. So that would be one argument for saying that the federal government did have authority to implement legislation to protect her right not to be maimed, a child's right not to be maimed by adults. I think that argument.
But didn't the judge say that it just needed to be a state issue, such as like criminal sexual assault is a states' right thing?
Yeah.
And I think wasn't that his point basically, was that it can't be enforced by the federal government because it's not breaking a federal law, and it needed to be a state crime issue.
Did you read something beyond the article? Because I just read this article and I didn't see anything about the judge saying that. But did you find that somewhere else?
He found that laws penalizing female genital mutilation should be handled at the state level.
He did say that.
Yeah, similar to laws regarding criminal sexual conduct, battery, or child abuse.
Okay. I think that is a plausible argument. It's a reasonable argument.
It was almost the same as the argument you were making on the abortion thing.
It is a plausible argument. However, I would also argue another possible grounds for finding a constitutional protection for these children. And I'm going to come back to the state thing. Mm-hmm. But another plausible grounds would be the Ninth Amendment, which says that the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. And I think you could make an argument that in a case like this, that there could be an understanding that in civilized societies, children cannot be brutalized in this way. And even though that right is not explicit in the Constitution, that's why we react when we hear this story. It's like appalling. It's like, God, there's got to be some way to protect these children, right? So that would be another argument. And then the 14th Amendment argument would be an equal protection argument. 14th Amendment, I'm just reading the part that's pertinent. All persons, okay, let's see. No, let me go down this. No state shall ... deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So I think you could argue that there's an equal protection issue that now this applies to the state of Michigan, so you raised that, whether the state should be prohibiting this. That the state is not equally enforcing the laws because they're allowing this to happen to a particular group of children or a particular religion. Now you might even make the argument that they don't do this to boys, to a comparable procedure on boys. I don't think would be circumcision. I think maybe cutting the penis off.
Well, I mean, whatever it is, it's a non-necessary medical procedure.
Non-necessary medical procedure. I'm glad you recognize that concept. We talked about that before. But anyway,
right.
In the transgender context.
And that's another thing. But his words were, as despicable as this practice may be, it is essentially a criminal assault.
Yes.
Which he's basically saying he doesn't agree with it. But, and it's quite a flashy headline saying, oh, it's now legal, which isn't what he was saying at all. And I think it's really easy to be distracted by, that's a pretty serious headline.
It's not outrageous. It's outrageous.
But if you look at it from a different point of view, there are kids who are born hermaphrodites who don't have necessarily...
No, we're back to that again.
Well, hear me out.
Of
Don't have necessarily male or female genitals. They are put through surgery.
Both.
But they're not complete both.
Okay.
They're on some sliding scale between male and female.
Okay.
Combination of the two. And they're often put through dozens and dozens of surgeries for their own good. And I air quote that. Because
you mean as their children?
As children without their consent. And it's for their own good.
Yeah.
To give them they often are miserable. I mean, they're having surgery after surgery, sometimes 20 or 30 surgeries before adulthood.
Yeah.
And they still don't have function. But that's also, they didn't get to choose that either. So...
Well,
there's female genital mutilation, we also do the same thing to other kids because we think we know what's best for them. So shouldn't we just not mess with people's genitals until they're old enough to decide what they want to do?
Well, I would certainly make that argument on for the transgenders, that parents don't have a right to take a
Those
teenage...
Those are hermaphrodites, not transgenders.
No, I'm not talking about hermaphrodites. You're talking about hermaphrodites. I'm talking about transgenders.
Well, then why are you talking about transgenders? You have to be an adult to have
No, you don't.
Yes, you do.
No, you're wrong.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I'm not going to show you right now because I'm in the middle of a show, but you can research it afterwards. There have been many cases where parents are authorizing doctors to start treating children as young as 9 or 10 years old with hormones in order to change, quote unquote, change their gender. But again, that's a digression. I want to stay focused on the FGM, female genital mutilation issue. So you brought up the question about that the judge said that this is something that should be decided, that should be handled by state law, the state of Michigan. And that raises a very fundamental question, which is, why did the state of Michigan not do anything about this? Why is the state of Michigan silent while this practice is going on? Is it legal under Michigan law for children to have their part of their genitals removed in this way? And another question is, so we have one question. Why has the state of Michigan been on the sidelines, not done anything about this? Second question, which is related, is why are the feminists silent about this? I would think that feminists, I haven't heard anything. I would think feminists...
Do you hang out with a lot of them?
You?
I'm not a feminist.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Sure.
Close enough. You're as close to a feminist as. Yeah, no, I know. A lot of women
But
are
I think
feminists.
that men and women should be equal. I mean,
I haven't heard a word. Now, if you can find somewhere where feminists are hollering about female genital mutilation in the United States, I'd like to hear it. And if you want to research it, that'll be great. I'd love to hear it. But I think the answer is, assuming that the feminists have been silent, and if they're saying anything, they're saying it pretty quietly, because this should be all over the headlines. This should be headlines at every major media outlet. This is big news, and it's interesting news, and it's news that'll get them ratings. So you have to wonder why the media is silent about this for the most part. I didn't hear this on Fox News. Well, actually, there was a mention of it, a brief mention in passing on Tucker Carlson. That's why I researched it and found the case. But I haven't heard about it on I haven't heard about it anywhere. I haven't heard on conservative talk radio. Haven't heard about it on NPR, MSNBC, Fox News. I haven't heard the mention.
because I've heard it all over the news.
About this case?
Yeah.
Okay. So I stand corrected.
Well,
No, I don't stand corrected because
No,
I
'cause
haven't
you're
heard
right.
it.
You
Yeah,
haven't
I'm right.
seen
I
it.
haven't.
Yeah. We
But
just
in
looked
any
at the
case,
sources.
the question why the state of Michigan hasn't enforced their laws, why the feminists are silent, and I think the answer is political correctness. The left, especially, doesn't want to say anything that seems critical of the barbaric Muslim culture that this comes from. That's politically incorrect to criticize Muslims, Sharia law, any aspect of Muslim culture, or even suggest that Muslims are more prone to
You're
terrorism
gonna give me
than other
aneurysm.
people.
Actually, it's white men that are more prone to terrorism.
Yes, I know. A lot of white men fly airplanes into buildings and behead people. It happens all the
No,
time.
they kill more people than Muslims have in the U.S.
Yeah, no doubt.
They do.
There are more of us.
No, they kill white men committing terrorist acts. Have killed more.
What
US
terrorist
Americans.
acts? Oh, you mean like mass shootings and the like?
Oh, yeah, a lot of things. Bombings. I mean, you might remember
Look,
the Frederick
white
Monroe.
male is not a religion. It's not a set of beliefs.
Okay, white Christian male. How about that?
Look, why don't you stop the racism? Why
Okay,
don't you
Christian
stop?
male.
No,
What do you
no.
wanna do?
If you are identifying a particular group by race and vilifying them, that's racism.
No, it's not. It's
Okay,
just
it's not. Okay,
statistic
fine. Let's
that they're
stay on
white
topic.
men. Like that's not a racist thing. It's a fact.
Yeah, it's a fact. Okay,
mean, I
look,
didn't say-
I'm not getting into another digression. I'm going to stay on topic.
Okay, do.
Okay,
Please.
we can come back to it. Okay, so I think the most likely explanation for the silence is political correctness, and I think this also raises the question whether what's happening with this issue is foreshadowing the growth and ultimate triumph of Sharia law in the United States, because that is Sharia law to allow this. Now, let me just talk about the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan, as far as I could see, does not have any law specifically prohibiting female genital mutilation, explicitly. However, there is, in a legal dictionary, there's a crime called mayhem, which is the law in every state in the country. And mayhem is defined as the criminal act of disabling, disfiguring, or cutting off, or making useless one of the members, leg, arm, hand, foot, eye, of another, either intentionally or in a fight, called maiming. The seriousness of the injury makes mayhem a felony, which is called aggravated assault in most states. To commit mayhem is to cause gross harm in an uncontrolled fashion. Now, the state of Michigan also has a law called assault with intent to maim. The term maim includes removing a portion of another person's body or face or damaging it with an intention of causing it to be unusable. Okay? So that's clearly, female genital mutilation clearly fits within the definition of assault with intent to maim, and it carries it's a felony. It carries a penalty of up to 10 years in prison and up to $5,000 in fines. A great bodily injury is defined by Michigan statute as one that causes serious impairment of a bodily function or internal injury, blah, 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 blah. So where the mother facilitates the maiming of her own child in this manner, Now, this is grounds not only to put her in prison, but to take the child away. Child should be removed from any woman who would do such a thing.
Or father. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but I'm talking about the mothers here, because the mothers are doing
Right, but there
yeah,
are,
obviously
there
the
are
fathers.
also.
And I would say that if you observe anyone about to engage in female genital mutilation, you have a right to stop them with whatever physical force is necessary.
Right. As you
So-
would with any other felony being committed.
Any violent felony. So if you see somebody about to commit female genital mutilation, you know, you're running a risk. So I don't know, you follow my advice. I want a full disclosure here that you're running a risk, and I'm not a practicing attorney, so I'm not offering this as legal advice. But you're running a risk that you could be criminally prosecuted. But I believe that you would have a valid defense. Somebody starting to genitally mutilate, to mutilate the genitals of a little girl, you have a right to shoot them if you have to stop them. Just as you would if somebody's being physically assaulted in the street. And a question I have for the audience is whether we Americans are really going to stand by silently and allow these fanatic Muslim barbarians to force Sharia law on our society over our own constitution.
Because, you know, the Quran doesn't, it's not mandated by the Quran. I mean, there's a discussion about a mistranslation or a debatable translation about female genital mutilation, but scholars of Muslim religion pretty much have agreed that it's not a thing. It's just small sects within the Muslim religion. It's not like every Muslim does that. I mean, that's like,
I don't think every Muslim does it.
absolutely not.
No.
It's just sects within the.
Right.
But there's also Roman Catholic sects
I think it's very common in some countries, some Muslim countries, and not
Some sects.
so common as. But look,
Sects of religion.
I haven't read the Sharia law. I don't know. I've heard about Sharia law.
So you don't
I haven't
know?
read it. I've read the Quran. I know some of their stuff. I know that the Quran is laced full with calls for violence against.
So is the Bible.
Hang on. Rest of sentence. I know that the Quran is laced full with calls for violence against non-believers. It's a recurring theme throughout it.
Okay.
And it calls for their heads to be removed and, you know, force them to either convert to Islam or pay taxes or, you know, there's a lot of calls for violence against non-believers.
Okay.
I haven't really studied Sharia law specifically, but my understanding is that it seeks to supplant the law of, like in England, that it's become quite advanced, that there are a lot of Muslims living there, and that they resolve their legal issues in Sharia courts instead of in the courts of the nation. And that they have a lot of these cultural things that you know, there are rules like that the woman cannot divorce her husband, the husband can divorce his wife. And now, whether stoning of women for adultery, which is commonly practiced in some backwards Muslim countries, whether that's part of Sharia law, I haven't researched, I don't really know. But I know that it is practiced in some places. Honor killings, you know, if the woman dishonors her family by sexual misconduct.
You know all that's in the Bible too, right?
What is
All
in the
that
Bible?
stuff.
Killing
if
women
a
for
woman,
that?
Yeah, if a woman has premarital sex, like you can take her outside the city and stone her to death.
Would you see if you can
Have
verify
you read
that?
Have you read Deuteronomy?
No, what I've seen is that they could stone for adultery, but not for premarital sex.
Oh, if she was raped and she's in the city and she cries out and nobody comes to help her, then obviously she wasn't loud enough, and you can take her outside the city wall and stone her to death, and they shall both be put to death.
I think
if they're out in the country and nobody hears
Yeah.
her, then she just can't be married ever because she's pretty much useless now.
Can you document that?
Yeah.
That's the
me a
specific quote from the Bible.
Hand me a Bible.
No, just do it online.
Well,
What's wrong
how
with
about the killing of non-believers? Deuteronomy 13, 6 through 10, pardon me. If thy brother, thy son of thy mother, or thy son, or thy daughter, or the wife of thy bosom, or thy friend, which is as thine own soul, entice thee secretly, saying, Let us go and serve other gods, which thou hast not known, thou nor thy fathers, namely of the gods of the people which are round about you, thou shalt not consent unto him, no hearken unto him, neither shall thine eye pity him,
Neither shalt thou spare, neither shalt thou conceal him, but thou shalt surely kill him. Thine hand shall be first upon to put him to death, and afterwards the hand of all the people, and thou shalt stone him with stones that he die.
Okay, so in other words, that was pretty long, but
Kill any
it sounds like if
non-believers.
somebody abandons the Jewish faith,
No, it's kill any non-believers.
non-believers in the Jewish faith. That's the Old Testament. If they don't believe in God, they're saying they should be killed.
Right.
Okay.
But
I
Muslims
want you to
and
know.
Allah
I want,
it's the same thing.
I want you to know that I don't believe in that.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I don't believe in stoning people to death because they don't
Then
subscribe
neither
to
do
your
all
beliefs.
Muslims, but just because the book says
But they do it.
Oh my God, so do some Christians.
You see, this is the thing. I got into this argument once.
Once?
Hello?
I'm sure it was more than once.
If I may be permitted to finish my sentence. I got into an argument once with someone about who was making your argument. I said, well, throughout the Quran, there's these constant calls, or repeated calls for violence against non-believers, infidels. And someone else who said, there's stuff like that in the Bible too. And I said, okay, well, I'll look into that. When a group of Jewish men hijack an airplane, fly it into a building, and kill 3,000 people. That's when I'll look into that. Because if that is part of their ancient religion, but it's not part of their current belief system, or they're not currently practicing that, then I don't think it matters that much. So what I'm looking at is I see a lot of Islamic terrorist groups that believe in all this stuff. And I hear people say, oh, they've hijacked their religion. They've perverted their religion. No, they haven't perverted
Yes,
it.
they have.
No, that is their religion. That's what it says.
Okay, so you're using the 9/11 attacks, which was...
It's not just 9/11. It's been
Can
constant
I
ever
finish
since.
my sentence?
See, I just rang the bell on myself.
Oh,
I'm a big guy, I'm willing
Are
to...
you?
Yeah, I'm
you're
willing
a
to...
big boy? That's good. I'm very proud of you.
Go ahead, finish your sentence now. Hopefully you've forgotten it by now, what you were going to say.
Absolutely not.
Good, go
In
ahead.
2001, the terror attack by the Muslims was awful. It was terrible.
Yeah,
But that was one major incident.
wasn't just
It was
one.
but it was a major incident.
okay,
What about all the other terror attacks that have happened since then?
exactly.
Do you know how many of them were committed by Muslims?
All of them.
None. Almost
What are you
none.
talking
Okay,
about?
almost none. Do you know how many were committed
wait.
by white American men?
Wait,
Half
stop,
of which
stop,
were
stop.
American born.
You're just talking about in the United States.
Yes, of course.
Okay,
Sorry.
and you think that there were no terrorist attacks
I
by
didn't say, I
Muslims in
said
the United
almost
States?
none. I'm pretty sure there were none. In fact, the list of countries
Yeah.
that were banned on Trump's ban list, you know how many people have been killed from any citizen from those countries?
How many?
0.
Okay, so you don't think there were any Muslim terrorist attacks in the United States since September
There
11th?
may have been a few, but the number of...
There have been several.
The number of terrorist attacks that have been committed by white men with far-right
Well-
extreme views, that's a perversion of Christianity.
I don't think you're right about that.
I think I am. I
Okay,
know
here's where I think you're wrong.
Okay.
Okay, first of all, there have been several attacks with mass killings by Muslim terrorists.
And the U.S.
There was one in the U.S. There was one in Fort Worth, Texas, by an officer who was a psychiatrist, but he was
When?
also a Muslim extremist. It was during the Obama administration. I don't remember what year.
Okay.
Obama called it workplace violence. It was not workplace violence. It was a terrorist attack. But Obama didn't want to acknowledge that Muslims were committing terrorist attacks in the U.S.
Okay, but
So he called it workplace
even if
violence.
we call that one
Okay.
a terrorist
no,
attack,
there was
or a workplace violence,
excuse
and
me.
we to make it a terrorist attack,
There
how
was
many
there was
of them?
one. Hang on, there was one in California
Okay.
where they
Right,
went
with
into
the couple.
a
Yes.
Christmas party. Okay,
Right.
I don't know how many people they killed there. There was another one where they attacked Marine recruiters who were unarmed. You dared them to attack armed Marines, but they attacked unarmed Marines,
Okay.
killed 4 of them. So there've been at least those 3.
Okay, so there have been a few.
Okay,
I'm
so
not
it's
gonna say there are
factually
none.
incorrect to say that there haven't been any.
Okay, I said that.
Okay,
there
now
were
you're
probably-
saying that they're
but
white. Hang
way
on.
more
Now you're
white
talking
men.
about white extremist group terrorist attacks, and I would like you to distinguish between like these wacko guys who go in to start shooting up high schools and stuff like that, compared to people who were like the guy who went into the synagogue recently.
Mm-hmm.
Now that was a white,
motivated.
yeah, that was a racial extremist. Okay, so surely there have been some, but like the one in Nevada in Las Vegas. That wasn't ideological. That was just some crazy guy with a high-powered machine gun up
Wasn't
in a
it?
hotel room. Well, what do you know about it? Because I've never heard anything in the news about that.
So
What you
you're
think
saying,
that was?
you're saying
You
like
think a
Muslim-
white guy was shooting all these white people because of racism? What are you saying?
I
It was a country music concert,
yeah.
and it was a white guy who did it.
Okay, so that's
So you
not
think that was
terrorist?
racially
So
motivated?
what would you call it then? If a Muslim guy going into a place of business and shooting the place and shooting a whole bunch of people is not workplace violence in your view, but terrorism, then the guy in the hotel shooting at a lot more people is what?
Well, I don't know. Look, we may
if you're
be,
going to make one terrorism,
look,
isn't
Morgan,
the other one?
we may be arguing about how many angels or how many devils in this case can dance
Yeah.
on the head of a pin.
No, you're not.
What?
It was a simple question. Why are you trying to avoid it?
Excuse me.
You're trying to avoid it.
What, if I may be permitted to finish my sentence.
Wait, your Dodge?
No, excuse me. I don't even remember what your question was. But the point is that it may be obscure and irrelevant to try to draw subtle distinctions between guys who are just insane and start shooting people because they're mentally ill, and guys who start shooting people because they're Nazis or Ku Klux Klanners or Muslim terrorists. I think there's probably a difference, and I think it may be useful to make that distinction in terms of trying to prevent. You know, if you know, oh, well, it's terrorists, so the FBI or whatever needs to infiltrate terrorist groups, find out who these people are, and prevent it. Whereas with the guys who are just like lone wolf, wacko guys who have no particular ideological axe to grind, they just like killing people because they're crazy.
Okay.
That there's a
Not
different
different crimes.
avenue to trying to prevent those kind of crimes. You got to figure out who the crazy
So
people
why
are.
is it that
And I think, you know, in your ideologically motivated desire to vilify white guys, which
Why would I
is a
wanna do that?
recurring theme in your rhetoric,
why would I want to do that then?
I don't know. That's
Because
that
if
you can ask your
facts-
psychiatrist why. I don't know why.
Well,
but
it's facts, but you know.
but
okay.
the point is that I think you're blurring those distinctions in order to try to maximize your argument that white heterosexual men are the real villains, which is like kind of a racist perspective, I think.
Sorry, you think that?
I mean, Muslim isn't a race; it's an ideology mingled with a religious system.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Because I can't. What am I supposed to say? Like Middle Easterners?
well, I mean, in other words,
I mean,
you're going to lump together me and Joe Biden and Al Gore and David Duke. You know, David Duke's is a
I
Ku
know
Klux
what you're
Klanner,
saying.
and those two guys are liberals, and I'm I don't know what you call me, like a constitutionalist, and you're going to lump us all together and say, well, you're all white men. Well, it's insignificant what race we're a part of. The important thing is what do you believe and how do you behave? Don't you see?
I do, but isn't it white men that have?
See, there you go again. Go ahead, finish your sentence, and then I'll say there you go again. Go ahead, finish.
Can I? Thank you. Isn't it mostly white men that have the anger that motivates a lot of these things? Whether it's their religious view, it's the anger of all the immigrants are taking their jobs. They feel like they're losing out. They feel like they're losing power. They feel like they're being disenfranchised and like taken advantage of because they're losing the entitlements that they have.
Well, I don't know. Some white guys may be pissed off about some things. Other white guys may be pissed off about other things. Some white guys aren't pissed off at all. I'm sure you're not arguing that Las Vegas shooter who killed 58 people was motivated by his fear of immigrants.
They don't.
I mean,
know,
first of all,
they
nobody-
don't. They don't know what his motivation.
Do you know
was.
what? Nobody took his job. He was a millionaire. He was a CPA, and he was a millionaire.
He also had child porn on his hard drives. But
Well, so what? Okay,
right,
so
we don't know what his motive
okay,
was.
so then what's your point then?
What's your point?
My point is that what's your point?
My point is that white men is not being racist. It's a statistical observation.
Well, what about white women? What about black men? I mean, what's the point? Where do you
They
go with all
don't
that?
statistically commit those same crimes.
Black men?
Don't commit the kind
Are
of
you you totally unaware of what's going on in Chicago? The murder rate in Chicago among black men?
is very high.
Yeah.
But they're not the same
So
types
what
of
the hell?
crimes.
Look, I'll tell you what.
They're not the same types of crimes. They're not shootings of random people.
I guarantee you that if you were to do a study, if you were to look into it, you research this.
I shall.
I guarantee you that you would find that the number of murders committed by black men
Okay, murders are different.
Hello?
Murders are different than terrorist acts.
I'll start the sentence over. I guarantee you that if you were to research the number of murders committed by black men in America compared to white men, you would find that black men commit more murders than white men. To which I would say, so what? What's it got to do with race? I don't care. It's a useless bit of information. It's not about race. And why don't you say that black men feel threatened by immigrants because they're taking their jobs? Because the reality is probably more black men lose their jobs to immigrants than white men. Probably.
Because white men aren't being marginalized, they just feel marginalized. And black men have been historically marginalized.
No, I don't feel marginalized.
Really?
No. I feel like I got a target on my back from people like you.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's
I feel
marginalized. Because you're just being welcomed to the world. Like, everything's becoming more equal, and you've had entitlements.
No,
like,
you know what? You know what,
happen.
Morgan? Whatever entitlements I have or haven't had have nothing to do with being white. Okay? It has nothing to do with being white, but it's really
your
socioeconomic
class and your race. It's a lot of things.
Let me correct your language. Let me correct your language.
Oh,
marginalized is not the term for it. Okay, when I hear these feminists and these Me Tooers, and this includes you.
Okay.
But I became.
Please be more disparaging. You're not quite there yet.
But I became very aware of this during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, when I started hearing some of these women from this anti-male movement.
No, it was anti-douchebag movement.
Excuse me.
It's different.
When I started hearing their rhetoric, I realized that what they were doing is turning white male heterosexuals into a new minority. Numerically, white male heterosexuals are clearly a minority. Okay? They're turning us into a minority, and they're targeting us. They're going after us.
Are they?
Yes, because when you start saying, "Oh, well, you have privilege, and you've oppressed everyone else," and they say this. I don't know if you say it, but they say, white men, white heterosexual men have oppressed everyone else throughout history. Have oppressed women, oppressed blacks, oppressed gays, oppressed minorities, Hispanics, Muslims, oppressed everyone else. When you start talking like that, that's the language that you use before the French Revolution or the Russian Revolution to justify what you're about to do to the people who you're calling oppressors. When you call us oppressors, I know what comes next. You got to go after the oppressors. You've got to overthrow the oppressors. You got to start rounding them up.
You're going to give me an aneurysm.
You said that before.
Yeah.
I don't even know what an aneurysm is. It's something that happens in your brain, like it's a brain clot.
No, it's a burst blood vessel.
Okay.
But they can happen anywhere in your body. It's an embolism.
And you're going to blame me if that happens? Look, I want you to know, Morgan.
I actually don't care that much about your opinion, so it won't give me an aneurysm. It's just kind of frustrating to listen to your blah, blah, blah.
If it happens, I'll take you to the hospital.
Gee, thanks.
Sure. Don't mention
I'll
it.
probably die by then, but that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I don't even know where to begin to respond to that, because the oppressors, white men have oppressed things. Like, it doesn't mean we're coming after you. It just means maybe you guys should, change some things so that it's not oppressive.
I never oppressed anybody.
Society as a whole did. So you're part of it. And since you're so ignorant of it, you're continuing it on because you're not aware.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about your confirmation bias on your little bubble.
Don't just throw a bunch of words at me. Tell me what you're talking about when you say that society oppressed people. Okay. Who did society oppress?
Anybody who's not a white male. To differing levels, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Are you oppressed?
It depends on you. I don't know about oppressed, but
there
are a lot of advantages to being a white male.
Like what?
Like jobs, CEOs, COOs don't hire that. Like most corporations don't have women, and it's not because they don't have the testosterone. I know you have that stupid thing.
Actually, they do, but I don't
not
care.
very many.
Let's suppose
so
that
hiring
let's say for the
opportunities-
sake of discussion that all CEOs
No,
of the
but
top...
its hiring opportunities
Look,
are different.
for the
People's
sake of
society's
discussion,
view of men and women are different.
society can't think. Society is a collection of millions
No, but
and
we
millions...
teach our children to
Excuse
think.
me. A society
Is
is
what
an...
we teach our children.
Excuse me. Society is an abstraction.
Society
Hold on.
is
Can I say
teaching
two
your
sentences in a row without you interrupting?
If
Society is an abstraction. Society is millions and millions of people. Society doesn't think anything. Each individual thinks different
No,
things.
it has societal
But I
norms.
want to go back to your main argument. You say that women are oppressed because there aren't many CEOs.
in the hell was that that wasn't my main argument at all.
Okay, so did you say it?
Yeah, there are hiring practices. There's just the way that society.
So let's focus on that for a minute.
Sure.
Because you can't focus on 10 things at once. So let us say for the sake of discussion,
How about we see the broader picture and stop picking it apart like you think you can?
when you analyze things, that's what you do. You break it down, you take the parts.
But I need you to see the larger picture. This is a
You
tiny
know,
little
when-
example.
Whenever
Go
you,
for it,
whenever
then.
you
Go
feel like
for
you
it.
can't make a logical argument, you start interrupting me because you don't want to hear
I've
my argument.
interrupted you the whole time, so it's not
You are
that
now.
logical. I have been.
Is it okay with you if I put a few sentences together?
Sure.
And
but
then
I
you
need
can
to-
respond. Yeah, you need to go at 3. You got time.
No, I actually need to go now because it's. I thought I had till 4:30, and I only have till
Would
4.
you indulge me to ask you this question before you go?
If it's fast.
Okay. So if I were to concede that women have far fewer positions of power in corporate America, okay? I think that's factually correct. I don't know what the percentages are, whether 10% or 5% or 2% of CEOs of large companies are women. I don't know, okay? But I'll concede that it's certainly fewer than men. How is that my fault? If you know what, Morgan, you want to become the CEO of Amazon or Facebook or General Motors or any company. I don't care. Go ahead, have at it. I ain't stopping you. What's holding you back? Do it. Who's stopping you?
Society's views.
How is society, which is a collective, an abstraction, stopping you from becoming a major
I'm not
corporate
trying to
CEO?
do that.
Did you go to business school?
Charlie.
Did you go to business school?
This isn't a conversation. This is you just yammering. And
I'm asking you a
I have to
question.
go. Like, it's time for me to get going. I'm sorry, I don't have time to do this. I really don't.
You also don't have an answer.
I do have an answer, but I'm not willing to have this discussion when you're not willing to listen to me.
I just asked you 2 questions in a row that you wouldn't answer.
Because you asked how it was your fault. Nobody ever said it was your fault directly. And every time I tell you that it's society, you're like, nah, it's not a
I
thing, but it
also
is
asked
a
you-
thing. And you're just refusing to see it because it's too complex.
I asked you a question. What is keeping you from becoming a corporate CEO? And you don't have an answer.
Hiring practices, the gender pay inequality, the fact that women are punished for having children.
Punished?
Yeah, actually, if you want to do some research, you probably should, because you clearly don't know much about the whole
Oh,
pay
I
gap.
know quite a bit about it.
Do you?
Yes.
Then when does the pay gap?
Who is?
rise?
How come?
Because society
how
allows
come-
it to happen, and
no.
those
Why don't
feminists
women-
haven't fought
Look,
enough
you're-
to make it equal.
You're in the majority. Why don't you take over the corporations and keep men from rising to the top?
Because the people
What's
are-
stopping you?
The people at the top, the laws, the government, a lot of things are stopping
The laws-
us. But that's what the feminist movement is about.
When we do the next podcast, because you obviously don't have time to answer now, you're going to tell me what law keeps women from rising to the top of corporate America. You come back
It
with that
doesn't.
research.
It doesn't. It's
It
not
doesn't,
the law.
exactly.
The
Thank
law
you.
isn't what keeps them from it. It's the fact that the people
You
in power.
said the law.
I said a lot of things. It was a list of things, and like usual, you pick the one thing that you think you can argue with instead of opening your mind and listening to the whole thing. Because you have a
I'm
problem
listening
with
to
bigger
it.
pictures.
I'm willing to listen.
No,
Morgan,
you're not.
But you're going to
And
have
if
to.
you- then
You're
show
going to
me.
have to back up. You're going to have to back up. You can't make. You make a blanket statement.
Oh, Charlie.
You make a blanket statement that women are being held back from rising to the top of corporate America.
Yeah, learn things.
Except that
Really.
some women aren't held back. Some women actually make it
Good
to the
job.
top.
Some women do.
Some
but
women
not a
do.
lot of- most of them don't.
And so the question is, maybe they're holding themselves back. I don't see who's holding them back. How
Your
can you hold them
ignorance
back?
Makes my heart warm.
If that's what you want,
It
I
makes
can't
my heart
stop
warm.
you.
It really does.
Morgan.
You're right, and you're not at the top of the corporation. You can't give me that opportunity
I'll tell you
either,
what.
can you?
Go to business school. Get straight A's.
I don't want to do that.
Get a job
there
at a
are women that have
corporation.
done that and don't get hired and don't
they
get promotions.
do. You're wrong. They do.
There are women, but for the most part, it's men that get those promotions.
then maybe they want them more. Maybe they're
Oh,
working
please.
harder.
That's exactly the attitude. That's why that is why people say that you're the problem, because you have the same attitude. Maybe it's them. No, it's
There is
it
no
might
way.
be,
There
but
is no
there's
way.
no way that all men are better at things, because people generally see men as more committed to the job. Men who have children get an increase in pay, where women get a decrease in pay. Because the men are seen as having a family to support and responsibilities, therefore they'll be more committed to the job. Whereas women are seen as less committed because they're now a mother. So there's an example of how society changes everything.
You don't have any facts to back that.
Yes, I do.
And
Go
you-
look at the Implicit Project. It's a Harvard
I'll tell you
research
what.
project on there. I want you to try to do it and run some of those tests. It would
When
be
we
very
do the
interesting
next
to see your answer.
podcast, I want you to be prepared to explain to me how men can stop women from rising to the top of corporate America, but women can't stop men from rising to the
Because
top.
the men are generally at the top of the corporations. That's not a difficult concept.
Well, why aren't women at the top?
Because they have to rise up to the top, and they haven't, because men don't want them at the top. What is wrong with
and
you?
why isn't it the other way around? You're in the
Because
majority.
men have dominated society for thousands of years.
Oh, so it's because of what happened thousands of years ago.
You are absolutely unbelievable. You know that?
Those corporations didn't even exist thousands of years ago.
Your little bubble of ignorance
When was
is really
when was
difficult.
Facebook created?
Oh, Lord.
When was
so
it
this is
created?
the problem that you have about seeing
When
the
was
bigger
Facebook
picture.
created?
I don't know, 2001 or something?
Okay, why didn't a woman create it?
Because he stole the idea. There weren't a lot of women in technology.
Okay, how about
Women
Amazon?
are not encouraged to be
How
in
about
technology.
Amazon? When was Amazon created?
I don't, just because they didn't create it, women have ideas, but you know what?
Who
People
created
don't
it?
support those
A
ideas.
man created it. How about
Right?
Google?
Did he, or did he just own it?
He created it.
No, he brought it together.
Okay. How about
You know what? He wanted
how
to
about
name it Relentless.
Google? Who created Google? Did a woman create it?
How long have women even been in the tech sector? Do you know what the percentage of women
Are you
in
going to tell me that
technology is?
Stanford doesn't allow women into their computer science program?
For a long time, they weren't, no. When my mom went through engineering school, she was the only woman in engineering school. And that wasn't because women didn't want to
When
be
was
there.
that?
And she was born in 52, so the early
52?
70s is when she was born.
Well,
so
was-
18 years after
I'm
that.
sorry, but that was 40 years ago. I'm
Well,
saying
then there
now.
you go. There were a lot of men in engineering school, but there weren't
Are you
women
going to
in
tell me
there.
that MIT and Stanford and Harvard and Yale don't let women in?
They didn't let women into college until the 1800s.
That was 200 years ago.
But the men have been in power since then. There's this ongoing
And there's a
problem.
conspiracy of men to keep women from rising in power?
No, it's a good old boys club, just like with everything. It's a good old boys club.
I'm sorry, Morgan. It's an excuse. You want to start a tech company, go start one.
I shall, if I wanted to.
You want to be a corporate executive, get the education for it
But
and
that
go
is
for
not
it.
rising to the top of a corporation. That's starting your own.
up
Those
to
are
you.
different things.
It's up to you. Nobody's
Like,
holding
your
you down.
argument is invalid.
Nobody's
Those were
holding you
different
down.
things. Starting your own tech company is one thing. Rising to the top of an existing corporation is totally different. You're you're done making sense. You're just spouting
Okay,
your.
I'm going to tell you,
things.
I'm going to make this going to be my final parting shot.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, when my grandfather came to this country from Russian, he had a Russian accent. He was obviously Jewish. He was an immigrant. Okay?
Okay.
He told me that the Jewish guys back then knew that they weren't going to make it to the top in the Christian companies and Protestant-run companies. They knew they weren't going to make it, right?
You said it was your
No,
grandpa?
My grandfather.
Okay.
There was discrimination against Jews, and they knew they weren't going to make it. Okay? So do you know what they did?
Started their own.
They went into business for themselves, and they became richer than the guys who wouldn't give them jobs.
Okay.
The Jews in Philadelphia, New York,
Okay.
became very wealthy. They started at the bottom,
Okay.
and they worked themselves
How
up
is that?
because the
How is that?
discrimination, which was real, unlike what you're talking about, which isn't real, the
Isn't it?
discrimination didn't keep
How
them
is it not
down
real?
because they didn't let it. So don't give me a
Then
bunch
you're
of
calling,
excuses.
but you're calling this feminist movement to be such a problem. It's the same movement, but it's women doing it instead of Jews doing it.
Yeah, but no.
Yeah, it is. It's
They
the
didn't
same
do
thing.
it by whining and forming movements. They did it by starting their own businesses and succeeding. And all you guys do is whine and fuss and complain. You want to be successful?
Did you still want me
Nobody's
to
going to stop
Did
you.
you still want me to fix that electrical thing for you? Because I know you're not mechanically inclined.
Okay, there you go. Good dig.
Yeah.
Good way to end. Okay, this is Jim Greenfield, the smartest guy I know here on the Decline and Fall of America. Thank you, Morgan. That was a great argument. I really enjoyed it.
It was pleasant.
And I'm sure you did too.
Thank you. Goodbye.
You're not going to quit, are you?
No, I just.
Are you going to leave before I pay you?
If you don't hurry, yeah.
You're welcome for listening to another brilliant installment of The Decline and Fall of America starring Jim Greenfield, formerly known as The Jim Greenfield Show. If you have a topic you would like Jim to talk about, or if you think Jim is brilliant and want to cheer him on, or you think Jim is an idiot that doesn't know what he's talking about, send an email to jimgreenfieldshowpodcast@gmail.com, follow the show on Facebook at Decline and Fall of America, or on Twitter at JGS Podcast, or you can call and leave a message for Jim at 503-512-0811, and your message will likely get played on the show. And now, our beautiful outro music, the Ode to Jim.
14 years on the radio, Jim Greenfield served humanity. His bosses fired him 7 times. They said he's no Sean Hannity. Greenfield tried to stay out of trouble and be discreet as best he could. He claims the reason he got canned behind the mic, he's just too good. Jim's enemies tried to silence him in panic and hysterica, 'cause Jim Greenfield blames them for the decline and fall of